And the Labour Party is demanding fresh investigations into Boris Johnson's relationship with the American entrepreneur Jennifer Arcuri while Mayor of London.
It's yet another chapter in sleaze allegations involving the Tory party that's also seen Leader of the House Jacob Rees-Mogg accused of failing to declare £6 million of cheap loans from one of his companies.
Well, joining us now, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Lisa Nandy. Very good morning to you, Lisa Nandy. Look, the Prime Minister has said that he thinks he could have handled things better over accusations of sleaze. Do you think the Prime Minister should apologise? Do you think there should be a large-scale investigation into sleaze now? And do you think that MPs should even be allowed second jobs?
Well, look, let me start with the last of those. I think we should certainly tighten up the rules around paid consultancies and directorships, because it creates this grey area where MPs are supposedly offering advice but can often be lobbying government and using their privileged position in order to do that. So I think it's right that we push for some changes. But the truth is that there were rules already in place a couple of weeks ago when the Owen Paterson scandal broke. Those rules have been in place for decades. They say that you can't take cash for access, that you can't use your privileged position as a Member of Parliament for paid employment in order to give people privileged access. Owen Paterson broke the rules. He didn't declare a number of those transactions as well. Transparency is absolutely crucial so that the public can make up their minds about how we're spending our time and who we owe favours to and whether they think that is appropriate. And the Prime Minister supported him when he tried to avoid sanction and wriggle off the hook. I think when you bring it back to its very basic elements, this is rot that starts from the top of government, and it's all very well having a debate about changing the rules, but the truth is there are rules already in place, and if the Prime Minister is determined that those rules don't apply to his friends or to him, as we've seen with the revelations over the weekend, doesn't feel the need to inform the public about what he and his MPs are doing in their spare time and who they owe favours to, then no amount of changing the rules, no amount of inquiries is going to help. He's dragging British politics through the sewer. He should apologise, but frankly, I don't see any prospect that this Prime Minister will change his behaviour. I think we need a proper clean-up of politics, and it starts with the Prime Minister.
You've already mentioned Owen Paterson, and as you say, there was an inquiry, and Owen Paterson, in fact, he's now stood down. What do you think, though, about the Prime Minister himself, particularly his conduct while he was Mayor of London? Because, of course, Jennifer Arcuri, alleged to have been in a relationship with him, revealed more details yesterday of... she made claims about him saying that he wanted to be the thrust or the throttle in her career while he was in City Hall. Now, of course, a spokesman for the government says that was all investigated. He followed the legal requirements at the time. Do you think that should be reopened?
Look, I think the biggest problem with what the Prime Minister's done over the weekend is dismiss the idea that he had a duty to inform the public about what was happening with Ms Arcuri. What he does in his private life, frankly, is a matter for him. I'm not remotely interested in it, but I am interested when that spills over into politics, and you can see that with the series of scandals that have broken over the last few days. The allegations, for example, around Geoffrey Cox, who's been spending a lot of time working as a lawyer representing private clients and other governments. The problem is that when people like Mr Cox then walk into Parliament and lobby for certain things without being completely open and transparent about who they owe money to, who they're in paid employ for, that's when you get the rot setting in politics. And that's why we have a register of members' interest. That's why we have these rules about being open and transparent.
And so just,
that is what over and over again Tory MPs have thought actually these rules don't apply to us, and that is a real problem, because how can people trust their politicians if they don't even know who they owe favours to?
So you've got an issue with Sir Geoffrey Cox offering legal advice, and you've got an issue with MPs being paid consultants. So what is the difference then when Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, receives more than £100,000 for providing legal advice since becoming an MP?
It was noticeable, Lisa, that you said we should tighten the rules on consultancies. You didn't say we should ban all second jobs.
Because look, at the end of the day, we've got 2 MPs at the moment, for example, who are practising doctors. There may be more, but I know 2 of them well. They do hospital shifts. Now, some MPs, some members of the public might think, look, that's not appropriate. You should be working full-time as a Member of Parliament. But others might think that enriches your experience that you can then bring to the House of Commons because you've got first-hand frontline experience of the pressure that the NHS is experiencing. It seems to me the right way to deal with cases like that is to make sure that that information is upfront and transparent, it's in the public domain. And Susanna, the difference, I think, between Keir Starmer doing a couple of pieces of legal work and the situation with Geoffrey Cox is that Geoffrey Cox went into a debate in order to argue against measures that would have clamped down on Britain becoming a safe tax haven, people not paying their fair share in taxes, and didn't declare that in the debate. He did later apologise and declare it, but this is a problem because if you're in paid employ, you're not declaring that work up front, you're not declaring your interests when you're using your privileged position, then you really are dragging politics through the sewer. And that is the difference between what Keir Starmer did and what Geoffrey Cox did. Keir Starmer has always been open, transparent and upfront about anything that he's done externally with politics and any money that has changed hands as a consequence. And that, to me, is the important thing. We've got to be honest with the public, and then they get the right to make their minds up about whether that's appropriate or not.
Lisa, let me just ask you about the state of Labour politics, because Labour's ahead in the polls this weekend. But I remember in the 80s, Neil Kinnock regularly being 10 or more points ahead. The same was true with Ed Miliband in the early 2000s. Now, you, I know, as a Wigan MP, a Red Wall MP, you've looked at this very carefully. The polls don't yet say that Labour is winning back the lost voters from 2019, those Labour voters who went to the Conservatives in 2019. What do you think Labour has to do to actually start to really turn things round? Because it doesn't feel as though that's happened yet.
I think people are open to us for the first time in quite a long time, if I'm really honest, but they're up for grabs, but that is not a given. We can't be complacent. And they're looking, they're interested for the first time in a long time. They want to know what it is that we would deliver. But you know, Ed, because, you know, for a long time you represented a constituency that's not wholly dissimilar to Wigan, that there are many parts of the country where people have seen a settlement for 40 years, where good jobs have disappeared, where their kids have to get out to get on. And you can see the scars of all of that. We've lost spending power, our high streets are falling apart. People are really angry about the settlement that they've been left with. They got promises from Boris Johnson. None of that has materialised. We just had an announcement yesterday that we're not even getting the Northern Powerhouse rail that we've been promised, I think, 20 times since George Osborne first announced it. Those promises are gone. I think people have understood that the Prime Minister is a guy who says things and doesn't deliver. But what they want to know from Labour is, are we going to deliver for them? And I think that's a long road for us. We've got to be in our communities. We've got to be convincing people that we can make that change. We've got to be working with our mayors and Labour councils to show the difference that Labour makes. And that's absolutely
also know,
what
Lisa,
we're doing, what we're determined to do, and what Keir spent the summer doing as well.
Back in 2019, on the doorstep, anti-Semitism, defending Russia, being soft on terror. Doesn't Keir Starmer need to do more to show that there's been a real change from the Corbyn years? And doesn't that mean that people like Jeremy Corbyn and others shouldn't be coming back into the Labour Party?
Well, look, I've said for a long time, if Jeremy should apologise. I mean, I'd like to draw a line under that episode and move forwards, but that's up to him. I think the bigger question is, has the Labour Party changed? I think we've absolutely changed over the last couple of years. I remember the day that the Skripal attacks happened in Salisbury. I remember Theresa May rightly taking action to expel Russian diplomats, and I remember the Labour leader prevaricating over that. I think it's absolutely clear now over the last couple of years, certainly since I was appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary, that we stand up for the interests of this country and the security of this country, and we put that at the heart of everything we do. We don't tolerate racism in the Labour Party. We changed the rules at Labour Party conference. We got a bit of stick from the media and from others for obsessing about our own internal rules, but this was the core of whether you can trust us and whether we're fit to govern. We've made big changes over the last couple of years. We're not there yet, but we're absolutely on the right path, and we're seeking the trust once again of people to govern this country.
All right. Lisa Nandy, Shadow Foreign Secretary, live from Salford. Thank you very much.